May 19th, 1836, Native Americans attacked a group of settlers that were living in a place known as Fort Parker. Fort Parker was located in what is now known as Limestone County. There were about 35 people living there. By the time the raid was over, 5 people had been killed, 5 people had been captured, several had been wounded, and that's the beginning of this story, but it ain't nowhere near the end. So come on, let's figure out what happened at Fort Parker.
The Parker family had moved from Illinois to Texas in 1833. They were led by John Parker, his sons Benjamin, Silas, and James, and other members of their extended family. They settled near the headwaters of the Navasota River and built a fort for protection. It was completed in March 1834. Fort Parker's 12-foot-high log walls enclosed 4 acres. Blockhouses were placed on 2 corners for lookouts, and 6 cabins were attached to the inside walls. The fort had 2 entrances, a large double gate, and a small gate for easy access to the spring. Most of the residents of the fort were part of the extended family of John and Sarah Parker. On May 19, 1836, a large party of Native Americans attacked the inhabitants of Fort Parker. In her memoir, Rachel Plummer wrote that one minute the fields in front of the fort were clear, and the next moment more Indians than I dreamed possible were in front of the fort. One of the Indians approached the fort with a white flag. No one believed the flag was genuine. Silas Parker wanted the 5 men present to man the walls and fight as best they could. Benjamin Parker felt that by going out he could buy time for the majority of the women and children to flee out the back gate. He felt there was simply no way 5 men would be able to hold out the Indians more than a second or two, as they could use ropes to scale the walls. Benjamin Parker, knowing he would be killed, decided to go out and try to barter with the Indians to give the other people in the fort enough time to escape. He was killed, and before the fort's gates could be closed, the raiders rushed inside. Silas Parker was killed before he was able to get back inside the gate. Samuel Frost and his son Robert were killed inside the gate as they attempted to flee. John Parker was castrated, then scalped. In all, 5 men were killed, 2 women and 3 children were captured, and the rest escaped into the wilderness.
One of the people that was captured during this raid was a 9 or 10-year-old girl named Cynthia Ann Parker. Cynthia Ann Parker then went on to marry an Indian chief named Peytonacona. She had a son with him named Quanah Parker. Quanah Parker was known as the last chief of the free Comanches. He was the chief when the Comanches relocated to the reservation in Oklahoma, and he had a lot to do with negotiating that move. Cynthia Ann Parker was recaptured by a band of Texas Rangers led by a man named Saul Ross. Her and her daughter were recaptured. Saul Ross claims that during the raid he killed her Indian husband. Quanah Parker says that his father died about 4 years later and wasn't present at the raid that Cynthia Ann was recaptured at. After her recapture, she returned to her family that were living right outside present-day Weatherford. She had an uncle that was named Isaiah, I believe Isaiah Parker, who had served in the Texas legislature and had actually passed legislation to make Parker County a county, and the county was named after him. So the Parker County is named after the Parker family. Her daughter was captured with her, and her daughter died about 4 years later. And the story goes that she was just so depressed and distraught. She missed her family. She missed her husband. She was fully assimilated to the Comanche way of life and never was able to re-assimilate to the way her relatives were living. She eventually stopped drinking water, stopped eating, and she passed away about 7 years after she returned to her family from Fort Parker. So there's not always a happy ending to these things. Her son, Quanah, had his mother actually reinterred with him, and I believe she's buried now someplace close to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. She had been buried here in Texas, and her son had her moved. Quite the story. A lot of Texas history in there. The Parker family, very important family in Texas history. Anyways, and that's all I got for right now, so check you later.